As we all make New Year's resolutions for 2025, we're going to do the same thing for the Chicago Bears, who have a lot of work to do to be their best selves in the new year.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we put together some New Year's resolutions for the Chicago Bears. Some big and obvious ones. I mean, they got to hire a coach. They got to figure a bunch of stuff out there. But even more granular in there, I want to get into some things this team needs to do differently this year, just based on where they are in this team building process, going from a team with a rookie quarterback and now going through a lot of transition with a new coaching staff, but also a team that should be ready to compete sooner rather than later. And that shapes a lot of how we look at what this organization needs to do moving forward. So, I think first and foremost, as far as what the Bears need to resolve to do in the new year, right? It's about getting an adult in the room, finding a real leader who can kind of whip the organization into shape a little bit here. Of course, you're not replacing Kevin Warren this offseason. By all accounts, you're not replacing Ryan Poles this offseason. You're not replacing George McCaskey this offseason. So it's not going to be, a complete cleaning of the house and top to bottom restructuring. But I still think a quality leader at the head coach position can come in and demand things are done a certain way that can sort of shape up the rest of the organization, not necessarily from the ground up, because the head coach is not the ground floor there, but kind of build it up towards management as opposed to from the top down in that regard. They need someone who comes in and is very clear and consistent in their communication, making sure that everyone is always on the same page, that there's a transparency there, that there's no one left wondering or assuming what it is that they're supposed to be doing, but instead knowing because it's been outlined very clearly to them and they always know where to go or to whom to go for the right information to be able to do their job successfully and to do it at a high enough level to help the Chicago Bears win football games. Part of that is about attention to detail. A large part of that is attention to detail, and that feels like something that has been consistently lacking from this organization through multiple regimes, but certainly under Matt Eberflus, where little things slip through the cracks a little bit too consistently, right? You can find in-game things like Tyreek Stevenson on the Hail Mary play, or Doug Kramer fumbling on the goal line, or Doug Kramer failing to report as eligible on the goal line. And sure, you can start to blame individual players if we talk about individual things in the field, but then stuff like Jalen Johnson playing a whole game without a captain's C stitched into his jersey. That's not his fault. Not blaming Jalen Johnson there, but it's an organization thing. How did they not have a captain's patch sewn into a player's jersey? And then it's, timeout usage on the sideline. It being ready and prepared for the next situation. It's the use of challenge flags and the operation in the booth upstairs communicating to the coach. Everyone has to be on top of everything and pay attention to detail and not let little things slip, not assume, and to just do their job properly. They need someone who can come in and do that. That's what I say, the resolution is to have an adult in the room, right? To have somebody who can really lead this organization, right? Having accountability across the board. That was a big problem with Matt Eberflus, and it feels like it continues to be a little bit of a lingering problem in the locker room and among the coaching staff of just making sure that guys are accountable for their mistakes and that those mistakes don't start to happen more than once and repeat over and over again, and you end up doing the same thing and getting the same results. Just overall, they need a team direction of what they're going to be. Like, this kind of plays into the next resolution I'm going with here is like the Bears need to develop an identity, like a clear identity. And a new head coach can come in right away and say what he wants the identity to be or whatever, but like there's a process there, right? It takes time to establish that with the right coaches, with the right players, and get that mentality pushed through. But it felt like the last few years, the Bears haven't necessarily had a complete identity. They were a defense-first team for a little while under Matt Eberflus, and they played, aggressive, generating a lot of turnovers style of defense there. But even that, like, what was the identity of the defense? Were they particularly physical? I mean, kinda, but not necessarily. They weren't like the most physical defense in the world. Were they like a speed finesse defense? I mean, kind of, but they weren't like the most finesse light defense in the world. Like even the defense, like what exactly was their identity other than like they made turnovers a lot and that was great. But is that an identity or is that just something they did frequently? And then certainly offensively, the Bears have not had consistent identity on that side of the ball. Like when we think about Ben Johnson and if he ends up being the next Bears head coach, or even Mike Vrabel, like those are two guys who we know Vrabel carries a certain identity of how his teams are tough, his teams are physical, his teams are no nonsense. And Ben Johnson comes from a Dan Campbell team that has a lot of energy, that is also quite disciplined and carries themselves like they're going to be more tough and physical than the opponent. But also his offense tends to have a pretty good identity structure of running the ball, of play action, of getting rid of the ball out of Jared Goff's hands fairly quickly, giving him a lot of answers. Like there's a structure and a reason and a purpose and a direction behind seemingly everything that they do. And that's not something the Bears have had in a long time. And that's something they absolutely need to set out to do better in 2025 with that new coach. But it's not just the head coach, right? It's the staff he picks. And it's partially, the players you choose to bring back or not bring back on your roster. Obviously, it's Ryan Poles' team. He's not going to overturn everything and change over a bunch of stuff. They're still farther along the team building process than that. But the guys have to be able to fit what you want your team to be, and you have to fit your team to the guys that you have. And just to be able to get a little bit more aligned from top to bottom is a really important part of starting off 2025 the right way with the Bears. That probably means Ryan Poles will get a contract extension to align with the head coach, because you don't want Ryan Poles on a 1-year lame duck year. And then what are you going to fire your GM 1 year after hiring your head coach and then hire a new GM? But maybe that GM wouldn't want to pick the head coach. Like you're going to have to align things that way. And we're going to have to make sure that Kevin Warren's role and Ryan Poles' role and the head coach's role are all very clearly defined as far as who has final say over the head coaching hiring, who has final say over roster decisions, over trades, how the communication process is always going to work. Not just we'll figure it out, we get along well, but like, no, these are the rules. This is the structure. Here is how our organization operates. Like it's really finite. Maybe you almost want to go into too much detail just to make sure that everyone is very clearly on the same page, because so much of what we've been talking about here is what has held this Chicago Bears team back. Then we can start to say, okay, you get an adult in the room, you get some leadership and some real communication and accountability around there. Then we can start to get back to talking about, winning, building a championship contending team and how this roster starts to look. And that's where I want to turn the New Year's resolutions from here, because I think there's some things that need to be different about the players you already have, and also some things need to be different about the players that you're going to acquire this offseason. So we'll look at some other ways these Bears New Year's resolutions will affect this roster next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the last regular season action with FanDuel. If you want to get into one last Bears game here, you can put some money down on Bears-Packers, where right now the Bears are 9.5-point underdogs on the road. If you want to predict the Bears upset straight up, it's Bears plus 310, and the over-under is set at 40.5 points. What's great about FanDuel is right now, if you place a $5 bet on that or any of the games or any of your favorite sports, you will get $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. So many different ways to play and so many different ways to win. Whether you want to bet on the NBA season, NHL, the college bowl games and playoffs, college basketball as well, soccer, tennis, boxing, hockey, I mean, you name it, they've got it all on FanDuel, all in their app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. First and foremost, it's coaching, it's leadership, it's getting those guys in the building and solving some of the organizational dysfunction and structural issues here. Once you get that in place, which is easier said than done, then I think there's some ripple effects here. And right away, one of the things that it's going to sound counterintuitive, but when you hear me out here, I think it'll make a lot more sense. That when the new coaching staff gets in, like they have to let these veteran Chicago Bears players, some of the leaders of this team, kind of get back to their old ways. And you might think, well, their old ways, like old ways they've been losing for, decades here now. It feels like, what do you mean get back to their old ways? But I think it's specific with guys on this team who this 2024 season has just not been good, but it's been uncharacteristic in a way that there's such a theme across this roster of players underperforming this season that either Ryan Poles has gotten every decision he's ever made about this team wrong, or having a bad coaching staff really limited the quality of the players that we know to be better players than what we saw. Like if you really start to look across this Bears roster, you can think about it more intangibly here of like how many players on this Bears roster are playing lower than you expected them to play. And then you can also measure it statistically. A bunch of different Bears players are averaging career lows. Like they're going to finish the season, unless something crazy happens against the Packers in Week 18, they're going to finish this season with not only a down year, but their worst year in multiple statistical categories. And it's like across the roster. And that to me is what makes it feel like it's a coaching issue a little bit more than a talent issue for these guys in particular, right? I think about DJ Moore. We can debate exactly where among the top wide receivers in the NFL DJ Moore ranks. I mean, is he a true bona fide number one or whatever? Like, that's not the discussion I necessarily want to have. The point about DJ Moore is that we have seen him go over 1,100 yards in 4 different years in his career. He did it 3 times in Carolina, and last year with the Bears, he had a career high 1,364 yards. This year with the Bears, he's currently averaging a career low, I believe I just lost his number here. It's 9 yards per catch this season from DJ Moore. I believe, I'm looking in the wrong section. That's why I'm like, where's my numbers here? His yards per catch this season are 9.9 yards per catch. This is the first year of his career he's been under 10 yards per catch, and really the first year under 12 yards per catch. He has not been nearly as effective this season. It's not going to be a career low in total yards because his rookie season was a little bit lower, and same with yards per game, but he is trending lower and lower and lower in most statistical categories. Now, did DJ Moore become a bad wide receiver at age 27? Or was this a reflection of a really bad Chicago Bears coaching staff making him be worse? Like DJ Moore's got to get back to playing like DJ Moore. You go to Keenan Allen, averaging a career low 51.4 yards per game. I mean, okay, maybe you can point to him as, that's just because he's getting older, but there's a lot of players on this list that really kind of go a long way. Like it's right now, it's the lowest receiving yards he's ever had in a healthy season. He may eclipse that against the Packers on Sunday. We'll see, but like, is he all of a sudden just dropping completely off the map, or did he go from 1,200 yards last year to 700 yards this year because of a really bad Bears coaching staff? We move to DeAndre Swift in the backfield. He's turned it around a little bit as the season has gone on, but he's still averaging a career low 3.8 yards per carry. The only season of his career under 4 yards per carry. Now, again, he could have a 150-yard game against the Packers and finish the year not in a career low there, but we've seen DeAndre Swift play better in pretty much every year of his career until he came to Chicago and played with this team. Same with DJ Moore, same with Keenan Allen. Like, until this year, they've all played at a really high level. Montez Sweat on the defense, 5.5 sacks this year. Technically, would not be a career low, but in terms of sacks per game, he's averaging a career low. He had a year where he only played 10 games in 2021 and had 5 sacks, so he has more sacks. So it's not a career low in sacks for a full year, but in terms of sacks per game, how often he's sacking the quarterback, he is sacking the quarterback at the lowest rate of his career this season. Did Montez Sweat just become all of a sudden a bad pass rusher at age 28? Or is this a really bad Bears coaching staff and a really bad Bears team that's making your players that you thought were good and know are good? We know Montez Sweat's a good pass rusher. We've seen him do it for his whole career. We know Keenan Allen's a good receiver. We know DeAndre Swift's been a good running back. We know DJ Moore's a good wide receiver. Tremaine Edmonds only has 3 tackles for loss this year, a career low. Kyler Gordon doesn't have any interceptions this year, a career low. Like across the board, there are a bunch of Bears players who are underperforming. And I find it a little bit hard to believe that all of them all at the same time just became bad players after we've seen them be good players in Chicago and elsewhere. And it feels to me more like the coaching staff was not properly utilizing and getting the most out of those players. And so the new coaching staff can come in and get those players to play more like their old selves. And that's going to make the team better. Not because you got new players there, but just because you coached the players better and put them in better positions to be successful. So like the New Year's resolution for those guys is just like, hey, get back to how you used to be. Like play how you used to play. We don't need Tremaine Edmonds to be, better than he's ever been. Just get back to playing how you used to play. We don't need Montez Sweat to take some giant leap to new heights. Just get back next year to playing how you used to play. Swift, Moore. Across the board. Just get back to your old self. Like we don't need you to completely reinvent who you are and change everything you've been doing from a technique standpoint. Like let's give you some real adult coaching in the room. And maybe that can be the kind of thing that can get these guys a variety of positions getting back to what they're fully capable of. And then I think in a similar boat, like we're at this point now for the Bears where I think in 2025, we got to stop the excuses. Like I think we're running out of time to be patient with this team and these players. But when you think about the bigger team building process here for the Chicago Bears, we're kind of at this point where 2024 was the year where like, okay, well, rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver, don't expect everything to be perfect just yet. But 2025, I don't care if it's a new coaching staff or not. Well, it is a new coaching staff. I don't care if it's a new coaching staff. There's no more waiting around for younger players to get better and say, oh, well, he's struggling, but he's still young and he's still developing and he's still figuring it out. Like this team is ready to win soon, ready to win now. The way that Jim Harbaugh comes into the Chargers and takes them to the playoffs in the first year, like the Bears absolutely should be expected to make the playoffs next year. We should be expecting that if you hire the right coaching staff, this Bears team can make the playoffs next year. So then there's no excuses for like, oh, well, I think this is honestly like it applies to Caleb Williams. Oh, well, Caleb Williams is still a young quarterback. There's no excuses in year 2. Okay, it's a new offense or whatever. Other coaches, other quarterbacks, other teams figure it out in their first year together. Maybe not rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, but we don't have the rookie inexperience excuse anymore in year 2. Same thing with, if it's Rome Odunze at wide receiver or, some of the younger guys on the offensive line, Darnell Wright, or if you draft a rookie left tackle and you start him, if he's not playing well, we don't have time to sit here and go, oh, well, you just got to still wait for the young players to get better and then the Bears team will be good. You got to hit the window now. 2024 was the year to be patient and to let guys develop a little bit more. But like next year, you either play well or you put somebody else in there. I think Gervon Dexter took a nice step this season. And so, you'd like to see that continue next year. If he struggles in year 3, get somebody else in there. You don't have time to develop these guys. Or Zach Pickens at the other defensive tackle spot hasn't taken that step forward this year. If he's slow again in 2025, don't play him. You don't have time to give snaps to young players and let them learn on the fly and make mistakes. Same thing with Tyreek Stevenson at cornerback. Like you're just not going to have time to let these guys develop through. Get better players then. Have an option there. If there's a young player with a question mark because he's young, get another option. Be ready for that young player to not be successful because you can't go into this season, you got to hope if Stevenson can get better and if Pickens can get better and if your rookie left tackle can play well, and if these players all get better, then the team will be good. Like, you can't go in needing these ifs, ands, and buts. Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers had a great quote on Locked On Packers this week. He said, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, then we'd all have a Merry Christmas year. We'd all have a Happy New Year. Like, the Bears can't be this team that keeps relying on if this player gets better, then they'll be good. Get a better player then. Like, the championship window is right now when Caleb Williams is on a rookie contract. And if you get Ben Johnson, the right offensive coach, year 1, offense should be good. Maybe it's not going to be their best version, but good enough to make the playoffs. So start building a winning team and not building a future team. Don't build a team for 2026, 2027, 2028. Like, get better players now because you need to start winning in the next 2 years. So yes, you're still going to draft players. You might have to rely on young guys in some spots, but they need to be better or they need to be replaced. You need to have other options there. No more excuses for players who aren't playing well when the time to strike is now. That's a really big part of this New Year's resolution for this Bears team. Make 2025 a year that you're actually going to take seriously instead of, oh, we're still building, we're still trying to assemble everything. Not anymore. It's go time. Get the right coach, get the right players, and let's go. And that involves some different investments in this roster than we've seen Ryan Poles take in the past. So we'll look at the New Year's resolution of investing in the trenches next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most out of these final weeks of football action, and that's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has you covered. And with over 10 million members, it's clear that people are loving this platform. You want to look at Caleb Williams' passing yards or DeAndre Swift's rushing touchdowns or any of your other favorite sports, not just football. They've got it all at PrizePicks. Right now, we've got a special offer for Locked On Bears listeners. If you download the app today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Whether that lineup hits or not, you're getting those $50 instantly with our promo code LOCKEDONNFL at PrizePicks. Run your game. This year, Ryan Poles needs to make the New Year's resolution to build his offensive and defensive lines, invest money, invest draft picks, invest trade assets. Whatever it takes, that group on each side of the ball needs to be the number one roster priority this offseason. Obviously, coaching staff is kind of number one overall priority, but number one roster priority is those positions. Not only because they've been kind of the Achilles heel of each side of the ball, but also because those positions are already set to have quite a bit of turnover, so it's going to force Ryan Poles' hand in a lot of ways here. There's a bunch of guys set to hit free agency, so that you either have to choose to bring them back and say what you've seen from them is good enough, or go get better players. And go get better players is always easier said than done, and there's sort of a devil you know versus devil you don't aspect here. When you think about the failed free agent signing of Nate Davis, for example, or maybe it's too early to say whether Karan Amagaji is a bad draft pick yet, but the Bears haven't necessarily hit on a lot of their recent major offensive line and defensive line decisions, not named Darnell Wright and Montez Sweat. Dexter's getting there, right? So it's not as bad as it looks, but you need to really bolster this on both sides of the ball. Let's start with the offensive line, where when you really take a minute to look at like the contract status of this Bears offensive line, they really don't have a lot coming back. They will need to make some really important decisions here that will be forced upon them one way or the other. Right now, your offensive linemen who are under contract for next season, 2025, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, then Ryan Bates, who you traded for last season, and then your rookie third-round pick, Karan Amagaji. You have 4 players under contract on your offensive line for next season. And Darnell Wright is for sure a starter. That's about it. I mean, as far as, for sure starters under contract next season, right tackle Darnell Wright. In all likelihood, Braxton Jones and Karan Amagaji will compete as your starting left tackle. But I think if I'm Ryan Poles, if I have the opportunity to add a surefire left tackle upgrade, I'm going to do it. This goes back to what we were just talking about. Like, there's no more time for patience and excuses to say, well, we need Braxton Jones to get better, and between Braxton Jones and Karan Amagaji, maybe one of those two guys will take a step forward and be the left tackle the Bears need them to be. But then if they don't play, it's like, if they don't play well, then it's like, Amagaji's still young and raw, and Braxton Jones was a 5th-round pick, so, maybe we shouldn't have ever really expected them to be great. None of that. No more excuses. Like, if the opportunity to get a better left tackle is there, go get him. I don't care if you used a 3rd-round pick on Amagaji. I don't care if you've been developing Braxton Jones and like Braxton Jones and want to wish Braxton Jones all the success in the world. The Bears need a better offensive line, period. And if you have the opportunity to upgrade there, absolutely go out and do it. The problem is You have to make upgrades or changes or moves, some kind of decisions at your other 3 starting offensive line spots. Tevin Jenkins is a free agent. Coleman Shelton is a free agent. Matt Pryor is a free agent. Bill Murray is a free agent. Jake Curhan is a free agent. Doug Kramer is a free agent. Larry Borum is a free agent. Ryan Bates is your only interior offensive lineman coming back next season. You could re-sign Tevin Jenkins, and that there's one starter there, but you're going to be looking for center and right guard options there. And the Bears cannot go into 2025 saying, Ryan Bates is our starter. We believe in him. He's really good. He's good enough. Don't worry about it. Because we're, again, getting into this like excuses territory and patience territory of like, oh, well, if Ryan Bates doesn't play well, he was always kind of a backup anyway. And so, man, oh, geez, what should we do? Turns out this wasn't a good decision. Like, no, upgrade all of these positions. Ryan Bates can be your backup center. He can be your backup guard. He could be a valuable backup player for you. Braxton Jones can be the same thing, but go get a better center. Go get a better right guard. Matt Pryor can come back as a backup right guard. He's got guard and tackle versatility and plays decent. I would re-sign Matt Pryor. Absolutely, just not as a starter. So that's where it's like you have to get for sure a new starting right guard, for sure a new starting center, and then you either have to pay Tevin Jenkins or get a brand new left guard. But you have to invest in this offensive line. That means 1 or 2 decent free agent contracts and 1 or 2 significant draft picks. Go out and make sure that there's no excuse on the offensive line. There's no question on the offensive line. It's good to go. And you have a real group up front for Caleb Williams and whoever your offensive coordinator is. Same thing on the defensive line. It's been the weak link on this Bears defense all season. The pass rush comes and goes. The run defense has fallen off of the board. We talked a little bit earlier this year about how the defensive line is coming up with free agency soon as well, but that's another spot. You're going to need to do even more investment here. You've got Montez Sweat coming back, Gervon Dexter coming back, Andrew Billings coming back, and Zach Pickens coming back. Austin Booker as well as a young guy. And then DeMarcus Walker is also under contract for next season, but he could be a salary cap casualty because you probably are going to want to upgrade that spot. It's kind of like the Braxton Jones question. Yeah, you could bring back DeMarcus Walker and add some competition, or you could just go out and upgrade it and get a surefire better player there, either with a first-round draft pick or maybe a first 2-round draft pick or a significant free agent signing. You're going to need better defensive tackle depth. Byron Cowart and Chris Williams and Jonathan Ford and Zach Pickens are not cutting it right now. You need better players if Andrew Billings is hurt or if Dexter is hurt. And you've got players in there that just can't stop the run and can't get after the quarterback here. And then even if you replace DeMarcus Walker, you're still going to need better complementary pass rushers. Austin Booker can probably grow into a bigger role, but that's not enough. Like, you want Montez Sweat and a new starter, and then Booker can rotate in, and then you also want another guy to rotate in. And maybe that guy's DeMarcus Walker, and you keep Walker and move him to the bench and sign a new starter. But you need better pass rushing options, better defensive line options in the running game too. But like across the board, more of an investment in the D-line, more of an investment in the O-line. That needs to be a major resolution for Ryan Poles as he tries to build out this Bears roster in 2025. If you follow these resolutions, you invest in the trenches, you stop with the excuses for young players, you get the veteran players back to playing like their old selves, you develop an identity, and you get an adult leader in the room who can whip this organization into shape, you'll be a brand new Chicago Bears team in 9 months. Just like real New Year's resolutions. Yeah, if you eat healthier and exercise more and are smarter with your finances and stick to those things for 9 months, you'll be a completely different person by the end of the year. So let's hope the Chicago Bears can take some of these New Year's resolutions to heart. I hope that if you just want to add one more New Year's resolution, it's to listen to the Locked On Bears podcast just a little bit more, because I love being able to bring you daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. And that means making Locked On Bears your first listen each and every single day. I really appreciate everyone who's subscribed on the YouTube channel or wherever it is you listen to podcasts. The podcast will keep rolling strong throughout all of 2025, and we'll make sure each time we do the podcast this year, each and every day throughout the week, that you can resolve each podcast episode to bear down.